by transition officials to reach out to Russia. CNN has learned that the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is the very she belies President Trump's repeated denials of any contacts or involvement between his campaign and Russia. In your view, has the president lied about what communications his team had with Russia?
Well, abundantly and frequently and in about just about every way, but most significant in denying that this happened, saying it's a hoax.
After the court proceeding, Flynn went immediately to the home of his son, Michael Flynn Jr. Michael Flynn Jr. central to Michael Flynn Sr.'s thinking in this case. We reported recently that Flynn Sr. was concerned about the legal jeopardy his son might face. He is not mentioned, not charged in any of these documents, and it certainly raises the question as to whether cooperation from Flynn was in an exchange partly for protecting his son. Jim Sciutto, CNN, Washington.
Jim, thanks. Let's bring back now Kelly Jane Torrance and bring in Paige Pate, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney. Paige, good morning to you. Good morning again to you, Kelly Jane.
Good morning.
Paige, I want to start with you. Just days ago, CNN reported that Mueller's team questioned Jared Kushner in early November, specifically about Flynn's conversations with the Russian ambassador. Well, now that Flynn says he was directed by a very senior transition official to have those conversations, and sources tell CNN that that official was Kushner, how does that change your read of that Mueller interview of Kushner?
Well, Victor, it's not uncommon at all for federal prosecutors and agents like this to know everything they can about the case before they sit down and talk to potential targets or subjects of the investigation. And they will often tell people in that interview room, look, we know more than you do, so be careful about what you tell us and make sure it's true. And so I'm certain that when the investigators were asking Kushner these questions about those conversations, they already had some idea of what Mr. Flynn was going to say about them. So I think a lot depends on reviewing the transcript, if there is one, of those conversations, those interviews with Kushner, and whether or not he made a false statement to one of the investigators, because if he did, as we've seen with Flynn and others, that's a federal crime.
Hey, Kelly, so Flynn says that a very senior member of the transition team told him to have those conversations. And it takes us back to the question that we asked when we learned about the Don Jr. Trump Tower meeting, and we learned about the communications between Don Jr. and WikiLeaks. What did the president, or then candidate or president-elect, know, and when did he know it? We know that President Trump was very involved because he had a small team. Some would say micromanaging. Is it plausible that these conversations would happen and Donald Trump would have no idea about them?
I would say it seems unlikely, Victor, but with President Donald Trump and candidate Donald Trump, you can never say anything absolute, right? This is not a campaign that was a normal campaign, and you would think that a guy would know what his son-in-law is up to if his son-in-law is running his campaign. And, getting someone like Michael Flynn, who President Trump is also very close to. Notice that Michael Flynn is one of the few people that Donald Trump has really stood behind. And, he really likes the guy. And, I was just talking to Swin in the green room earlier, and he said that Donald Trump had actually sent him a written note saying, stay strong, in the days leading up to Flynn's guilty plea. So, you don't know what the president knew, what he didn't, but it seems, a normal person would be highly unlikely they don't know what their son-in-law is instructing their top national security official to do.
Yeah, we really don't know how long Mr. Flynn has been cooperating with the special prosecutor here and how much he knows about some of these communications. Let me get to you, Paige, about this Logan Act. It's an 18th century law that essentially says there's one government at a time and makes it illegal to intervene on the business of the sitting administration, especially for incoming administrations. Is this something that is really at play here?
Oh, I think so. I really think this is the heart of the case now. And what's interesting is no one's really been effectively prosecuted under the Logan Act before. I mean, it's on the books. It's been there a long time, as you noted, but no one's really been convicted and sent to jail because of a violation of the Logan Act.
But wouldn't that suggest that it's possibly off the table here when there is, with the case of General Flynn, so much that can be on the table?
Yes, and I think what Flynn ended up entering a plea to, the false statements, was an attempt to cover up for this potentially non-existent crime. So I don't think they had any idea, Kushner, Flynn, and the others, that they may be violating the Logan Act until after the fact. And then they took these steps, talking to themselves, lying to investigators, to try to cover up what may never have been prosecuted anyway. So I think the Logan Act is important here, but I think you're right. I don't see any prosecutions under the Logan Act going forward.
You know, Kelly, two people I've been thinking about over the last 16, 18 hours, Rick Gates and Paul Manafort. What does this potentially mean for them in this game of let's make a deal, who can you offer if we're flipping up? How does this potentially, I guess, jeopardize their value in any potential deal that they might have wanted to make? If you've got Michael Flynn, who was there during the candidacy, during the transition, and then in the White House, he'd seem to be far more valuable.
No, it's an excellent point, Victor, and he is more valuable, especially since now it's become clear that he is providing names of people very close to the president who instructed him to talk to Russia. And I have to say, though, I mean, how credible is Michael Flynn as a witness? It's a good question, I think. I mean, how did this guy who was, in the government before, he was the head of DIA, how did he not know that his conversations with top Russian officials would not be overheard? Of course, America spies on its Russian officials just like the Russians spy on American officials. And it's kind of incredible to me that this man did not consider, when he called the Russian ambassador on his cell phone, that this would be overheard. And that's why it's kind of shocking that he thought he could lie about it to the FBI. And you have to wonder, can you trust this guy? He seems kind of ridiculous and not really a serious guy. I mean, and again, keep in mind, this was the National Security Advisor for a month of the United States, and he's someone who doesn't even seem to understand how the national security apparatus in this country works.
Paige, let me take that to you. I mean, how reliable is a liar?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think in every federal case, you're going to see people who've cut deals with the government. And, of course, the other side, in this case, lawyers for Kushner, Trump, and the others will attack that person's credibility. I mean, they were so supportive of Michael Flynn before, but now he's going to be somebody you can't trust at all, according to them. And he has cut a deal, and that's fair game. They can say, look, he'll say whatever the special counsel wants him to say. Otherwise, he's going to face much more serious criminal charges. So he does have that issue of credibility. But I think it helps him that he entered a guilty plea, because he's come forward now in front of a federal judge and said, look, what I did back then and with other people around me was illegal. It was a crime. So admitting that actually helps his credibility to some extent.
All right, Paige Pate, Kelly Jane Torrance, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
So tax reform passes the Senate. Coming up, the next steps for this bill and what it means if it becomes the first major legislative victory for the Trump era.
No matter how the markets change, at T. Rowe Price, our disciplined approach remains. Global markets may be uncertain, but you can feel confident in our investment experience around the world. Call us or your advisor. T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence.
This is what on the heels of a very tough day for them. They started out with the news of an indictment and a guilty plea from Michael Flynn to lying for the FBI, lying to the FBI at the beginning of this administration. Really an extraordinary moment for the president. But at the same time, you heard very little from him throughout the day on that subject. Instead, we heard from him about taxes. He tweeted around 3 o'clock o'clock in the morning, right after this bill successfully made it through the Senate, that we are one step closer to delivering massive tax cuts for working families across America. He thanks Mitch McConnell and Senator Orrin Hatch for shepherding the bill through, and he said, look forward to signing the final bill before Christmas. That is the self-imposed deadline that Republicans have given themselves to get this done, partly because they want to be able to say that in this first year, the president has accomplished something on his laundry list of things that he promised the American people when he was elected. They weren't able to get health care through, so taxes is the next big thing. At the same time, with the Flynn investigation really going full steam ahead and getting closer and closer to the president, the time is running short for them to have political capital to really get things done. The more that this investigation goes on, the more it becomes a cloud over President Trump's administration.
All right, Abby Phillip for us there at the White House. Abby, thank you. And let's now take a look at the timeline of General Michael Flynn's contact with Russia, just to give us some better context. Starting in December of 2016, it was the 22nd, General Flynn asked Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak to postpone the Security Council vote. Then on December 29th, President Obama announced new sanctions against Russia, and Flynn asks Kislyak not to retaliate. Then December 30th, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he will not retaliate against the U.S. sanctions.
January 20th, 2017, President Trump is inaugurated, and on January 24th, Flynn lies to FBI investigators about his conversations with the Russian ambassador. Now then, 2 days later, January 26th, then acting Attorney General Sally Yates warns the Trump White House that Flynn was lying about calls with Kislyak. January 30th, President Trump fires Yates after she refuses to defend his initial travel ban.
And on the 13th of February, General Flynn resigned after misleading Vice President Pence about his calls with Kislyak. And now, of course, what happened yesterday, Flynn's bombshell guilty plea, it's thrown the White House into a really difficult position, despite the president's effort to make this investigation go away. Ex-National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's admission to lying to the FBI about conversations with Kislyak is the first in what could be, some are expecting, a domino effect, signaling more fallout. It could be in the works as Flynn cooperates with the special counselor's team.
Despite Flynn's arrest, a Russian politician is calling the probe a, quote, sack of smoke. CNN's Claire Sebastian joins us now from Moscow. Claire, what are you hearing about the conversations that are happening in Moscow regarding this news here in the U.S.?
Yeah, Kirsty, it's interesting. Russia very much in lockstep, it seems, with the White House this morning. Denials, dismissals, and frankly, distancing themselves from this. The Kremlin has not responded to our request for comment. We also contacted the Foreign Ministry, their spokeswoman, texting me last night simply to say, what has this got to do with us? An interesting echo there of again, the response from the White House. But we have, as you say, heard from a couple of prominent politicians, one of them tweeting this morning that this was the U.S., as you say, inflating a sack of smoke and calling the whole Flynn affair, quote, empty. Another saying that Flynn was just the guy they got their hands on, that the real object of this attack, he said, was Donald Trump. So very much, again, something that we've heard from the White House hinting that this is simply a witch hunt, an attempt by Trump's enemies to use the Russia card to discredit him. So, very much silence or dismissals. Those who are speaking about it are roundly dismissing it this morning.
All right, Claire Sebastian for us there in Moscow. Claire, thank you.
So this morning, there are new sexual harassment allegations, this time against Nevada's Democratic Congressman Ruben Kihuen. According to BuzzFeed, a woman who worked as Kihun's finance director claims that he made frequent advances, that he propositioned her despite her repeated rejections, and she claims he touched her thigh without consent on 2 separate occasions during his 2016 congressional campaign. Now, Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, among other leading Democrats, are calling for him to step down. Congressman Keenan didn't deny the woman's allegations and put out this statement. Here's what he said, quote, "I sincerely apologize for anything that I may have said or done that made her feel uncomfortable. I take this matter seriously as it is not indicative of who I am. I've spent my 15 years in public service fighting for women's equality, and I will continue to do so," unquote. Now, Keenan was first elected to Congress last year, previously served in Nevada's state Senate.
Still to come, a massive win for the GOP after Senate Republicans passed their reform plan, but there is another step at conference committee before it gets to the president, and still the concerns over Michael Flynn and the Russia investigation lingering. Former National Security Advisor pleaded guilty to 1 count of lying to the FBI, and we're learning more about Flynn.
Staying ahead isn't about waiting for a chance. It's about the one bold choice you make that moves you forward.
Everyone wants a healthy white smile, but the fact is, just brushing your teeth is not enough. Now there's a better solution. This is the revolutionary Waterpik Water Flosser. It removes up to 99.9% of plaque from treated areas and is up to 50% more effective than string flossing. Brushing, even with an electric toothbrush, only gets the surface, but the Waterpik Water Flosser cleans the areas brushing misses. To learn more, ask your dental professional about Waterpik.
You won't see these folks at the post office. They have businesses to run. They have passions to pursue. How do they avoid trips to the post office? Stamps.com. Mail letters. Ship packages. All the services of the post office right on your computer. Get a 4-week trial plus a